in terms of a governing coalition, it entirely depends on how low the ANC goes. The issue is if the ANC gets above 45%, which is, I think, where they'll land, there won't be any coalition.
The ANC has long dominated South African politics, but can it lose its dominance? I posed this question to Tony Leon, the one-time leader of the Democratic Alliance, in a recent episode of my podcast, Solutions with David Ansara. What follows is a short extract from our longer conversation. If you would like to watch the full interview with Tony Leon, you can do so by clicking on the link in the description below. Enjoy.
On the question of coalitions, David, it's very difficult. We've seen that. I would say, though, that if I might just stick with Israel, because I'm married to an Israeli, so we have a lot of Israeli politics and South African politics coursing through our home on a daily basis. It's interesting, you've got this extraordinary six-party coalition in Israel, which embraces everyone from left-wing Arab parties to right-wing Jewish nationalist parties, united by one thing, an absolute determination that Bibi Netanyahu should never come to power again. They have agreed on it. They managed to pass a budget despite having very little ideological coherence. And I suspect in South Africa, and I know it's very hard, there will be a coalition based on an absolute determination that the ANC needs to go if South Africa is to become a better country. And I think that has really seeped into the minds and hearts and souls of so many people now.
We at the Center for Risk Analysis, Tony, looking at the run-up to the 2024 elections, and one of the scenarios that we put forward is this, what we call the wild dogs thesis, which is that this motley assortment of opposition parties could bring down the mighty buffalo of the ANC that for so long has been roaming the savannah unchecked. There was always this assumption that it was a lion that would bring down the buffalo, but we think that the wild dogs will have a better chance.
I read those scenarios. They're very interesting. Look, the one thing you can't do, in my opinion, although it makes it very sexy politically, is you can't put a percentage. So there's only 5% chances, because who knows? We don't know what's going to happen. You know, the world can blow up next year. I mean, anything's possible. So I don't know what the percentages are, but I think there is some prospect that. Look, the other thing is, it depends. It depends if, in terms of a governing coalition, it entirely depends on how low the ANC goes. The issue is if the ANC gets above 45%, which is, I think, where they'll land, there won't be any coalition. The ANC will stay in power and will do a deal with the Mickey Mouse parties. You know, it's much easier to get the De Lille's in exchange for a cabinet seat. You already got Bantu Holomisa for one. I don't know who it'll be. The IFPs, will probably go in. They'll be able to get enough small parties to prop them up. It will be just mess as before. If the ANC gets in the low 40s and there aren't enough small parties, it's going to have to make a choice. Never mind the opposition making a choice. Does it align itself with the EFF or the DA? Because they're the only parties conceived that will have the bulk to bring the ANC over 50%. And at the moment that the ANC exercises that choice, there will be a split in the ANC, because there are. I think it's easier for the ANC to do a deal with the EFF, but there will be people in the ANC, and I know some of them, who are constitutional Democrats who won't abide the EFF. And there are probably far more people in the ANC who cannot abide the idea of being in business with the DA. So either way, there's going to be a choice, and therefore, I think, a split. So I do think the dynamic happens when the ANC gets below 50%, but I think one's got to qualify that and say, all this is just pie in the sky, wish listing, unless the ANC goes quite low, because otherwise I think the ANC will cobble together a coalition, which it is the majority party.
Yeah, I think we should be careful of wishful thinking and confirmation bias when we analyze these trends.
No, but why not? It would be wonderful to have one's bias confirmed in such a way, would it not?
Indeed. But I mean, you yourself had your own experiment with coalition politics when the DA combined with the IFP. Yeah, so tell us the
IFP was
details.
Not bad. Well, the IFP was problematic, but really, we were only for a short while in co-government with them in KwaZulu-Natal. We had 2 seats in the provincial executive. That was fine. But I mean, during the next election campaign, 2004, they banged on about the issue of Ulundi being the capital of KZN, and it just ate into our support in places like Pietermaritzburg. And people's experience of IFP government, I have to say, in Zululand was a very bad one. A lot of people did not think the IFP was better than the ANC when it came to actually delivering the goods or tamping out the patronage network. So but of course, ideologically, the IFP and the DA were much closer aligned than anyone else. So I think there's a difference between theory and practice. But I do think it was necessary for the DA to show it was in business with credible parties. And the IFP, if nothing else, is credible. I mean, governed KwaZulu-Natal, it was one stage a 10% party, and it had a lot of support in certain parts of South Africa. That has, of course, changed over time. The much more difficult experiment, because it had lasting consequences, was the DA's or DP's decision when I was leader to form a merger with the National Party, ideological enemy and apartheid. Now, the ally in the new South Africa, and of course the ANC said this is just the gang up of the whites. It wasn't that. It was to actually close down the competition in the opposition. We could have annihilated the National Party over time, but then that would have been the cost of actually taking on the ANC, which was what we were trying to do. So we thought, well, let's close down the competition and let's take the fight into the major battlefield. Now, of course, we had tremendous problems with the elements of the new National Party leadership, Martinus van Schalkwyk, Renier Skuman, Daryl Swanepoel, people like that, who were determined not to create a new party, but to recreate the National Party. So they left. We lost our foothold in the provincial government in the city of Cape Town. And it took us between 2001 and 2006, 5 long and difficult years to get it back, which we did eventually. But the truth of the matter is, if the DA had not done the merger it did, or the DP, to create the DA would not be governing Cape Town today, or the Western Cape, because we understood that our voters, or our potential voters, wanted to see those parties stop fighting with each other and take on a common cause. And that's why we did it. And to that extent was successful, although it had quite a hefty price tag attached. So coalitions, whether they formalized in mergers like the DA was between the DP and the NNP, or they're informal, such as the situation you've got in the city governments and Joburg and Ekurhuleni and Tshwane, they're hard and they require careful management, but you've got to remember why you're doing them.
Thanks for watching. Please do leave your thoughts on this episode down in the comment section below. Also, if you would like to watch the full interview with Tony Leon, you can do so here. And you can also subscribe to my other channel that's linked over here. My name is David Ansara. Until next time, take care.